So, welcome everyone. We're here for episode number dos, for the new Ben's Open Tabs series. And so, for those joining us for the first time, welcome. My name's Ben Hong. I'm on the Vue core team, work with the Angular team as well. Do a lot of work with the open source community, and huge proponent of the web. And so, in addition, I'm a huge productivity note nerd. Just love creating things, building things, and just looking for ways to just help people solve problems and just make their lives better. So for those new to the series, Ben's Open Tab is an amalgamation of work I've done before, where we combine really the intersection of where tech meets productivity and just meets like outlook on things. So I mean, tech and productivity intersect at a lot of different points, but certainly AI kind of at this point deserves its own category since it's so new. Although one could argue it's part of tech. But then we'll talk about basically any concepts that come up throughout. So, for those that don't know, I have a background in psychology. So a lot of what I do also is thinking about how it impacts users, how it impacts the people using the tools, and of course, like the things that we build and how it impacts them. So last week we did like sort of the inaugural episode introducing what Ben's Open Tab is, a little bit who I am. And so today we're actually going to be kicking off a brand new project because I figure what better way to kind of represent Ben's Open Tab than to have a brand new project that we kind of work through that kind of encompasses all of various topics that I've been covering over the years. And so that whether that be from Obsidian to like my background in documentation, software development, creating products, all that stuff, we're going to wrap all that up into basically a series that we'll do until we're going to do from beginning to end. And so we'll be creating it from scratch, all the way from requirements gathering, thinking about technical architecture decisions, things we want to play with, and then the workflow of actually building the product, not only manually, but then working with AI as well, kind of what currently the way I work with it in the workflow, and you'll get to see that live. And so that'll kind of carry us through. And so hard to say how many episodes this will take, but I figured it would be a fun way to kind of tie all that at the beginning, just so that we can kind of see different techniques being put into practice in a practical way. Because I do think one of the challenging things that's always I've always had when it comes to live streaming, especially from when I was choosing like specific topics for different episodes, there were like a lot of time was spent trying to figure out the right examples for it to be used. And there are times, especially when you're covering a specific topic, like you want to cover a plugin and stuff, you had to come up with examples that sometimes could feel a bit contrived. And so anyhow, I figure a real life project would be a great way for us to kind of move through that, talk about things, and then you'll actually see it in practice rather than just sort of coming up with an example to demonstrate how that might be useful. So with that, I think let's go ahead and get started. Alrighty. So to kick things off, the new project we're going to be working on is something that's honestly been in the back of my mind for a really long time, and it kind of takes the intersection of a lot of my interests, especially when it comes to food, but like along with the productivity and tech aspects. And so what I mean by food, to be very clear, is that there was the part of my life before where I was basically one of those foodie types, right? Loved going out to eat, still do, but it was like kind of my mission to go try different places, experience different food, culinary experiences, and all that fun stuff. And while that was a lot of fun, we live in a time where it's just a bit trickier to do that, right? And so combined with that sort of love for food and want a pursuit of things, then obviously cooking at home is part of meal management. And as many must know, when it comes to living on your own, like food is just, not even just living on your own, just in general, food's a big part of our lives. Even for those that aren't terribly excited about it. It's something we got to do, something we got to eat, so that we can live our lives. And so for me, there's always been kind of this challenge. And I think, to be clear, this is a problem that many people have tried to work on in the past. But I think the reason I think that this is a great project for us to work on together is because it really does allow us to explore app personalization in a new way. Because in the past, especially pre-AI, solving a problem that seemed already solved when it could work like 60-70% of what you wanted to seemed good enough. But now that we have the ability to speed up our productivity and to output differently with AI, then the personalization and exploring what might actually work really well as far as your own workflow, that is a great time to explore this kind of thing. So so that's what we're going to do. All righty. So first thing first, step one. So when it comes to starting a new project for me, it's always important for us to kind of sketch out the essentially like, let's talk about product requirements. Let's talk about what exactly it is we want to do. And so for now, let's go ahead. So I'm in Obsidian right now, and let's go ahead and kick off. I'm just going to put in my notes section here. We'll call it Ben's Food Management App MVP. I don't have a clever name for it yet, and we don't want to spend time on the stream debating the names for the next 30 minutes to an hour. So we're just keeping it real simple, what exactly it is. So for those who are new to working with AI, this is one of those things where rather than just go straight to an AI to prompt it, right? So in fact, let's actually take a look at that. I think this will be a good way to demonstrate this. So let me see. I'm going to go through, let's see. Yeah, let's do it this way. I'm going to go ahead and, oh, I don't have a browser open on this side, so let me do that. Boop. Yeah, this will be fine. Boop, boop, boop. Sorry, switching windows real quick. Perfect. All right. So, let's see. Oh, okay. Well, great. Actually, this will be kind of fun. We get to play around with Fable as well as part of this stream while it's actually available to us, at least at this time. And so, most of the time, I think when people are thinking about working with a new project, they're probably going to walk to their chat window here and might be like, all right, well, in this case, like I want to build a food management app. The MVP will be mostly recipe tracking. You know, write me a requirement doc. And so this is fairly common, and we're gonna see what kind of Fable comes out with in a little bit. And so we'll hold that off for a smidge. The reason I don't like starting with that is because it's one of those things where when you're thinking about what it is you actually want, what it is that makes sense, the blank page syndrome, where if you're not familiar with it, is where in the past when you were asked to write a paper, you would basically have to, you know, that's what we had. We had a blank piece of paper and we had to figure out what ideas we wanted to put on the paper and brainstorm all that fun stuff. And blank page syndrome was really difficult, and most people would tell you like not a fun process because there is this, in a sense, oftentimes there's this dread of like, what the heck do I put on here? However, I think or I don't know if blank page syndrome is, I'm not even, let me see, blank page. I don't think they call it blank page syndrome. They probably something else. Oh, I actually am right. Oh, okay. Well, my memory works. It's not so much a syndrome as I think it's part of the creative process. I think too, when it comes to aligning and thinking about what it is you actually want versus having someone tell you what to do. And so for me, I prefer to work through this way because it gives you time to not be influenced by what other people think. There is a time and place for a competitive analysis and looking at kind of where the landscape is. But at this point, we really want to drill down at the problem that I'm trying to solve and what it is we actually want to do. So for me, the problem, right, at this point, there's two main problems I've noticed when it comes to food management in my daily life. One is that meal planning is a bit of a pain. So there are two particular reasons for this. One is there's a question of ratio in terms of going out and eating in. And this is like mostly for budgetary reasons from a financial and time perspective, which is kind of funny because we could go through this whole productivity workflow because discussion about what it is that actually saves more time. Does it save more time to get carry out? Does it save more time to do XYZ? That's a whole discussion in and of itself. But the reality is that choosing to go out versus eating in, they both have their trade-offs when it comes to that. And also at the moment, right, I imagine other people have experienced this as well, but it's a lot more expensive to go out to eat than it used to be, right? Like, you know, let's do a quick thing, like historic Chipotle prices. I don't know if this one might be the best. Let's see. Let's see. Reddit uncovers receipt from 2015. I mean, let's see. Yeah. So here's one. Actually, I don't know if I want to use this one as it. I mean, yeah, Reddit is usually fairly reliable with this kind of thing. Okay, here we go. So here is someone who placed an order for their Chipotle bowl. Back then, it was get out. They had a bowl for $6.65. That's wild. I mean, nowadays, if we go into the Chipotle menu site, we're looking at what? Let's see. If I had to guess off the top of my head, a steak bowl from Chipotle is roughly 12, I want to say. Oh, I'm right on the money. $11.95. So, and that's like not including all the add-ons too, because if we look at this Reddit post, I think, did he get, oh, he didn't get guac. Okay, so if we're being fair, I mean, granted, this is 2011, so it's, I guess, 15 years old. But that's kind of wild thing about how much food used to cost, and especially what you could get, because back then not only were you paying less, but then usually the portion sizes were pretty good. And now I think when you look at the forums and stuff when talking about different aspects about managing food and that kind of thing, like, you know, what you get for your money is just a big part of that discussion. So anyhow, so since meal planning is a bit of a problem, there's that part. And so understanding ratio and that kind of thing is interesting. And perhaps at some point, if we want to expand on this app, that would be worth exploring. But the other part that I found on top of, because meal planning for the general part, you could say 7 days a week. If you're not planning breakfast, you have lunch and dinner. So that's 2 meals times 7, 14. You have 14 meals to plan out. You kind of roughly do some back of the napkin math to like figure out what's going on and how to estimate it. That said, over time, especially for those of us kind of starting to explore cooking more, recipe management ends up becoming a problem I think every home chef has to deal with, because it's one thing to like make do with whatever ingredients you have in the kitchen, but then it's another to actually be able to reliably see kind of either favorites that you have versus things you haven't done in a while. And so I've always thought that if that whole process could be structured a little bit more, it would actually make the whole process a lot easier, because I don't know about you, but sometimes it can be tricky to figure out what exactly it is you want to eat, or especially if you're going to the grocery store, what you want to make, because it's hard to necessarily predict what it is you're going to want to, what you're craving for and what you're thinking about. And so what I find, at least in my life, is that typically when I'm like trying to think about what I want to eat or whatever, I tend to lean on things that like are either top of mind because they're recent, or just really, you can tell old favorites, but really there's just things that I'm used to making on a consistent basis. But especially, as we know, one of the things that makes a food a big part of our lives is there's oftentimes we look for variety. And so how do you do that in a way that's like, doesn't exhaust your decision mental processes of like thinking through everything and just like scrolling through a large recipe list. And so problem number 2 is really what we're going to be, I think, managing, because I think we have an interesting workflow we can explore when it comes to all the tooling, especially in my life, that I use. So recipe management is difficult. That is essentially like the problem is difficult. And so the problems within it that variety is a tricky thing to manage. So the data storage is a bit of a mess as well. And so what I mean by that, it's because at this point there are, I mean, a lot of people have tried to solve the recipe app problem. If you have never looked into it, there's a lot of there out there. But once again, I think it's funny because I think recipe app management, as I talk about this, is actually very similar to note-taking, in that a lot of people have a lot of opinions and they'll build these really opinionated systems. But what you end up having then is that something that's really personalized to what they think recipe management should be. And then you end up in what I would call like data management hell. Because assuming you stick to the one recipe app forever, that's fine. But then you would then have to figure out how to input data a certain way and manage it. And in the event that app should ever shut down, which is the funny thing, which no one can ever really promise that it'll stay alive forever, is that, well, what happens when all your recipe management app is going down? And so that's kind of what I want to solve with this particular project, is a way for people to A, keep all the recipes for themselves, and then B, still have the ability to manage it, and then basically enhance the process with some of the workflows that we see from productivity, from tech, that would be helpful when it comes to decision making and just sort of like analyzing things. 'Cause I do think it would be interesting to be able to actually see in your food management app how you've been eating, maybe different cuisines you tend to eat more, or if there's certain routines you want to do. It's funny what a little bit of data can do when it comes to insight on that kind of stuff. So given that, so we let's get back to the problem. So data storage is a bit of a mess. Let's see, searching for recipes the day of is tough because you can't predict cravings, right? You could always just be like, because I've always found that to be incredibly tricky. And then new recipe management workflow isn't the easiest as well. And there have been different apps I've seen that have tried to solve that in different ways, but these are just kind of problems that if you want to cook at home, having recipes helps to enliven the process. It helps to make that work. So I think we have the general thing down. Now, in terms of how I want to solve the problem, let's talk about like let's see, we'll call it like technical architecture. So in my mind, the way we would solve this is one, when it comes to data storage, unsurprisingly to those who've kept up with my content for a while, it should be Markdown. There's really no reason for it to be anything else. Now, granted, there should be structure to it, because having some sort of predictable schema to it will allow the Markdown to render. Cause actually, that's what we'll talk about in a little bit. But anyway, Markdown. So data storage format is gonna 100% be Markdown. So we'll see. Format will be Markdown, and then at this point, for the sake of the MVP, the location of it will basically be your own local hard drive. And then we probably want to even explore how to connect it just to like a cloud folder so that other devices can access it. But that is the basic plan. So if your data storage is there, then the question is, obviously, we want to be able to render the Markdown. We want to be able to manage it. So when it comes to the app itself, the web part of it, in terms of like a local app, would I say web. The front end part of it is unsurprisingly going to be probably some sort of Vue 3 TypeScript. We could consider Nux as well, if it makes sense, or if I can get it hooked up to the right things. But then the main thing here, though, is that if I'm going to distribute this will start as a desktop app, given that we want people to be able to basically open their laptops, look through, plan things. And I think, especially when you're planning out your meals or looking at things, being able to see more data and have that real estate is a bit better. So I think a desktop app is probably where the MVP is going. And we're going to have to basically decide between Tori versus Electron in my mind, since we want to use web technologies. It just, given my personal understanding of it, that will probably make things a lot easier. And so knowing that we have that, mobile is just going to be a TBD, but we know that because the data storage will happen on some sort of cloud storage a cloud folder system, then that will allow everything to talk to one another once that's all connected. That's kind of at least how I'm envisioning it right now. Otherwise, Vue 3 TypeScript, Tori Electron, mobile. I'm trying to think of anything else we need to know about. Front end, Tori, and then I guess actually there's going to be, in terms of other things, there will be SAS as well, SCSS in particular, Tori Electron, and then I think this is basically it. All right, so we have the problem, we have the envision structure. I have an understanding of what it is I want to do. Now, this is where I feel pretty good about this part. And so let's take a look at what the AI actually came up with. Okay. So if we look at this is what Fable came up with. Let's go and take a look. So here's the requirements. Let's see, actually, how big is it on your screen? It is a smidge small. So, okay, I think this will be better. Perfect. All right, capture, organize, create. Okay, yep. Workflow, section 10. Next for monetization. That's funny. We're not thinking about monetization, but yeah, let's take a look at what it came up with. So it gave an overview of what it's trying to do: recipes, meal planning, pantry inventory, and grocery lists. This is where and this is actually one of the reasons why I didn't want to use AI, is because it's easy for scope creep to come into play. And so while it sounds like it would make sense for you to want to manage the list that way, I think that is very a far feature for me at this point. That's actually not nearly as important. So narrow scope to recipe tracking, core insight MVP, live scatter screenshot, browser bookmarks. That's correct. So clearly Fable understands the general problem that people are having, and I would say that aligns with my own experience as well. Capture the recipe, retrieval fast enough. Sure, that's fine with goals. Non-goals, meal planning, non-goals here. Cook curator, 20 plus recipes, user stories. Yep. Okay, so I like this. I like the way they organized that Claude organized it, because there's this sort of general workflow in terms of how we're going to build it. These are basically kind of like giving us our high level requirements in terms of features. So retrieval, cooking view, that is, yeah, that's totally fair. That gives you kind of like a step-by-step as you go. That way you don't have to like scan the whole list every time. So that's like an interesting enhancement that is suggesting. And otherwise, functional requirements, let's see. Yeah, this looks good. And then it's funny. So now they're talking about success metrics. And so this is where, once again, it goes to show the kind of training data and the way that it's thinking about it is looking for monetization. When for me, I'm really just looking at the app store. It's, the app technical architecture and all that things, essentially. So I think for generally speaking, we can say, yeah, I would say in terms of let's create a quick section here. So let me bump this over. All right. So let's talk about requirements. So one of the things you probably noticed, my emoji picker is not appearing for some reason. All right, get that later. You might have noticed I'm not just blatantly copying what it is from the AI directly into Obsidian, because one of the things that, as far as my workflow goes, is you really want the time to be able to sit with and internalize the concepts and ideas being considered, especially when you're working through any project, to be honest, because a lot of times when we're reading through things, they can, they sound good at first, but then when you give it just a little bit of time to marinate, give it a little time to analyze, you start to realize some of the things that might not actually make sense. And so I think as the general workflow though goes, we could certainly say that like there are probably three main categories where there's like this ability to capture recipes, there's the ability to let's say retrieve it's funny they call it retrieval. Let's see, meaning by search, filter, recently add. I guess that is a sort of retrieval, but I would just say search recipes. Really is just all you're doing. But okay, cooking view. I mean, this is like a bonus thing, so let's call this like a bonus section. There's a cooking view. I'm not actually terribly worried about that right now. And so actually, so there is this concept of how we actually manage it. So managing recipes in this regard. And so this is going to require like some sort of schema design. So let's see, let's do it like this. So we have a input requires a schema design. And so because at the end of the day, what we want is we want the, I don't know what terminology I want to use for this, but what I will call it is the ability to not only edit data on the app, but also be able to edit data locally. And so actually this is where I should have done this as well, is so we talked about the technical architecture, but really we should probably consider the workflow. This is really what I probably should have done first. And so, yeah, let me switch this up. So the ideal workflow in my mind boils down to kind of, there's a couple of different ways this would happen. And so one, you would be able to see all of your recipes in Obsidian. And the reason for that is because while you have the render, like while Obsidian itself is a render, and you can certainly do interesting things as far as creating and managing all your different nodes, which could be their own recipes inside of Obsidian. That in itself is one way to do it. And so in that regard, to be clear, it could really probably solve some of these things that we're talking about already, right? Because Obsidian, for example, I pay for Obsidian Sync, so that already has a sync capability, and all of it technically is done in this. And this is, to be fair, why so many people love Obsidian is because it does a lot of this stuff with it without having to build something on top of it. But for me, part of it is also that I want to see what other things we can explore when it comes to how it's being used. And so certainly this could make a case for like possible technical architecture, to be honest. Like an Obsidian extension might actually be a good candidate for this particular project, as we're talking about aloud, because if we're going to be allowing the data to live in Markdown, we're going to leverage Obsidian's sort of already engine to be able to manage it. So you can look at it. Then this would actually serve as a great way to like basically allow people to have an Obsidian first native experience. However, again, because this is a stream about trying out new ideas and just playing around with things, we're probably still going to end up having some sort of app, because I do think it would be fun to see what that experience is like with the different technologies, and to have just like a world where there are people who use a specialized app, right? Again, it's Ben's food management app that you're using on your phone. You're using it on your desktop. And because, you're not the kind of person who modifies Markdown anyways, because the truth is, even in the Obsidian, in a pure Obsidian workflow, it would be rather tricky to enforce any sort of real schema standards using pure Markdown, only because, well, it just depends on how keeping schema standards is tricky, despite the fact that, yes, we have things like front matter up here, which allows to designate different data types, fields, and such. And that provides some level of schemas, but it is not at the level we would need for recipes, which is one of the reasons why people keep trying to create custom ones, because recipes themselves are there's a lot of unique workflows in them. And so that's why I think there's like this combination of flexibility between the Markdown format plus an enforced schema, and which I know that a lot of other people have come to the conclusion to as well, at least as far as like this MVP. We're not trying to build a recipe app that's going to solve everyone's problems. We're going to start basically working through things in a way that we can build and just play around with things. And this is kind of the problem set that we're working with at this point. So, okay. Given that, okay, so we talked about through that Obsidian. Okay. So once again, let's take a look. Archive. Okay, so these are just workflow things as far as what it can do. And can paste URL, recipe import automatically. This has always been, I've always found this to be a very, as far as the capture, it sounds really ideal to paste the URL, then it can kind of parse and get everything. My only problem with this is that websites don't necessarily have a standard schema, like as far as I'm aware. Maybe I'm wrong. So we can do, actually, this will kind of be an interesting thing. Is there a standard schema model that people use for recipes? We'll think like how medical records have, are they called ERD medical records? I think medical records, I forgot what they were called. Nope, not ERD. Medical record standard. No, not that. JSON. There was a JSON standard. I'm like going off on a little bit of tangent. FHIR. Oh, wow, I was completely off. FHIR JSON. All right, let's see if Fable finds anything out, and then I'll do my own research as well. Food schema JSON. Looks like there's a recipe JSON LD with ingredients, instructions, cooking time, and instructions. Required fields. So it's published on 2015. Last edit Patrick Coombe. Okay, so notes. Okay, this is interesting. Section header. I mean, yeah. So it's a schema for. Yep. SCRP. Okay. So this looks promising. Again, I am totally down for using things that people are, if there are schemas that exist for this, but then things creative usage schema. Okay, there is this bit as well. So okay, so a couple things where you should be taking notes on this as we go. So how am I going to do this? I'm going to go ahead and bump this here, although I'm going to, let's see. Let's narrow this down a bit. See, actually, we'll do it this way. Like that. Okay, so there's a couple things here. There's a schema.org recipe, interestingly enough. So we could use this as a way to kind of see category, cuisine, diet, how to. All right, that's good to know. And then the other one, though, there's this JSON LD. Although, what is what is the LD example? This is the question. JSON LD. So they call it linked data. Oh, okay, that makes sense. So lightweight. Okay, sure. Okay. So we've done some basic validation. So we understand that there at least is some sort of standard that is out there that's clearly being used. And then use a JSON LD to make understandable search engines. Okay, so this must be fairly well used, which is great. Again, I am one for not reinventing the wheel, because once again, I completely understand and have acknowledged that there are a lot of people who have worked on this problem, and especially it would make sense that over time Google would prefer some sort of schema that people can understand so that it's easier to capture. So that must mean that this part is probably easier than we expect. And so here's the funny thing. I think what we have here is a great example of why it is important to slow down and allow yourself this process. Because, so what we just went through here, I think showcases this concept that there's a very good chance right now that AI has already understood all this and has prepped it. In fact, we haven't even looked at the answer for the that Fable 5 has gone through yet. But I would say that in this process, right, as we're taking notes and we're thinking through the problem, we end up with this thing where, one, personally, I am learning more about what it is that's going on. I'm not just sort of assuming that, like, oh, yeah, like, the AI knows what's going on, like, cool, like, it'll figure it out. No, like, I'd like to know personally, and like, from this session, I will walk away knowing better about, like, all right, that, like, okay, so search engines certainly are establishing, especially for popular data types, some things like recipes, there is a good chance now, so developing that sort of mental instinct of, like, okay, that some schema exists and how it uses it to better surface data and those sort of things. And so this is great. And so it's the learning process really that I think that makes a difference between how you use AI, whether you're, and so this is where I think it's funny. People talk about making AI work for you or somehow like helping you output more. And I have found that for people who have really opted into that, oftentimes, at least if we're purely approaching it from like a productivity perspective, then you end up with a very while you may end up with something that looks like the same output as something that takes a longer time. So for example, right now we could 100% just tell Fable 5 to one-shot a recipe app. In fact, you know what we're going to do? We are actually going to go ahead and, in a completely separate thing, let's go ahead and kick that off. So we're going to take like a quick shift from this, because while we're working through our process, we're going to talk about this. I think this is worth talking about. So I'm going to go ahead. Let's see. Let's see. Can I create? So, okay. So I'm opening a tool. So this is new, most likely for a lot of different people. And so we're going to, this tool is called Conductor Build, by the way, and it's a way to manage things. And so what I'm going to do is, yeah, okay. I'm going to open up real quick. Let's see, github.com. I'm going to create a new project. Where are my projects? Oh, new repo, sorry. And let's call this will be me, and we're going to call this food management. Food app. We'll call it full food app from Fable at this point, because that's basically what we're gonna just test it real quick. We're just gonna give it a blank bit. It would be fun to eventually play around with Copilot, but I have a very specific thing in mind for this right now. So we're gonna add a new project here. Open GitHub project. Yes, food app from Fable. Perfect. Clone the repo. So it's going to clone it. This is great. And then I'm going to let it, as the kids on the forum like to say, we're going to let it one-shot an app. So we're going to say, I want to build a local first app, allows users to manage their recipes using manage recipes. The data will be stored via Markdown format, and Yep, I think anything else, the app can see. Not even just local first app. We'll just say desktop app. I think for the fun of it, I've played around with Tori a bit, but let's have it. Oh, what's happening? Oh, conductor's just rebooting. Let's see. The app will be built using. Let's go ahead and use Electron and Vue 3 TypeScript, and styling will be done with SCSS. Let's see. And then anything else? Yep, I think that's it. I think this is about as like one shot as you can possibly get. And so actually we're going to go ahead and yep, we're just going to see how Fable 5 can go. I don't know how this is going to do for our token cost, but this will be a fun experiment. So, boop, that's going to go. And we're going to let this run on its own for a little bit, and we'll see where this goes. Okay, so let's switch back to the topic at hand. What are we talking about? Okay, great. All right, so while that's working, once again, when it comes to working with AI, I am a proponent of this point of rather than thinking of AI as artificial intelligence, as a separate entity that is there to, once again, like do your bidding, right? I think it's easy, particularly for those of us as developers or people who've worked with computers long enough, to think of them as tooling to create the thing that we want to make. Because largely that's been our relationship with tools, right? Is that like there's this thing and I want you to do it and you do it really well. You're really efficient at it, so do the thing. And so if it's like, say, an Excel spreadsheet, it's like, okay, I entered in the data. You're responsible for managing the sum. You're responsible for managing the graphs. Like, as long as I update the data, you manage everything else. And so it's worked out really well. That relationship has worked great. AI, unfortunately, changes the relationship we have with tooling because the way we interact with it, and more importantly, the way that the tooling, you could say, interacts with us, right? The feedback it gives us plays more on our mindset of working with an individual. Like, it feels more like working with a coworker. And it ends up in this weird place because we have AI that feels a bit like the staff engineer at your company, that you're like, oh, you know everything. Like, I should just, if you tell me to do something, I kind of take it on face value, and I can like ask you questions, but like, you know better than me. And there's that kind of like feeling of reverence and respect. And then at the same time, we've heard many stories of the AI completely going wrong, whether it's hallucinating or doing things it's not supposed to. And it seems more like the forgetful intern that is, you know, not knowing the implications of what they're doing. And you have to manage it constantly. And so in sitting with this for a long time, I've always wondered, how is it best to help people navigate the fact that there's these I only even talked about two personas. The third persona I think AI takes on is like an actual coworker where you're working alongside with them, paired programming, and that's good. But once again, the problem with the entities approach when you're thinking of AI from that concept is that there ends up being this constant juggling of like, do I treat them as a subject matter expert? Do I treat them as the intern? Do I treat them as the coworker? And that is exhausting for many people. And no matter how I spun it, I could not come up with a way to really advise people on how to identify when it is that they would behave a certain way, or how to treat the AI in the right context. And so that's why, rather than viewing it as this artificial intelligence entity, I am a big proponent right now of trying to think more of AI as augmented intelligence, and more importantly, it's about augmenting your intelligence. And so when I'm working with AI, my goal is not to just one-shot something as quickly as possible, even though it can be done, right? I think we're going to see, let's check back in real quick. So it's doing a lot right now. It's building some stuff. Yep, still installing Vue. Yeah, so it's running. It's doing its thing. It's gonna come out with something. I have imagined by the time this session is over, we're gonna have something that we can see from Fable that looks pretty darn good. I'm sure of it. However, if I do not feel like I have grown as an engineer or as an individual, like my intelligence has not been improved as a result of the interaction with AI, then that to me is like the easiest heuristic to understand whether or not you're using AI in a way that's actually beneficial to you. And so this is why we're taking the time to like go through, learn about things, ask the questions, do our own research, validate it, right, with the AI, let the AI, sort of surface the things that it noticed from its own research, from its own data set, and then figure out how that actually, and internalizing those learnings. And so once again, so let's take a look actually. So now we can actually look at what it actually came up with. And so this is really interesting. So it basically came up with the same conclusion we did. So nothing with the FHIR rigor, which makes sense because medical records are like heavily monitored and regulated, because medical records is not something you want to mess with, especially with data standards. Like, you can only imagine how much chaos that would cause if people could just mess with the schema. So it looks like schema org recipe is the closest thing. We learned about JSON LD. That's like linked data. So JSON linked data vocabulary that every website uses to embed it. That's how it powers the recipe cards. That's exactly what my instinct told me. Photos, great. Shared experience, everyone knows. 45 minutes, 4.8. This is awesome. Targets for URL import. So, okay, this is cool. So this is one of the reasons why it works. And so once again, this is a whole learning thing, right? I could have taken this at face value, but I wanted to understand why and what my initial concerns was. But now we understand the reason why this functionality could or should work is because any good recipe site that wants to be searchable via Google and index needs to follow this schema.org recipe bit. Okay, fair enough. It's reading FHR. Great, perfect. FHR requirement breaks down a certain way. FHIR true interchange standard. Schema.org is a publishing standard for SEO. Yep, so it's making the same concern that I had. So ingredients are plain strings, not structured objects, so hard to really match that. Correct analysis, I would say here, if we say, I don't know what guanciale is, but I was actually, funny enough, I read that as guacamole. But even again, let's just say 200 grams guacamole, or, onions diced, no quantity name. Yep, paprika, mela, bum. Other formats exist, but none. Recipe ML, H recipe, Cookalang, more hobbies, personal management. We did not see Cookalang come along in our quick search. Lingua franca, import it, offer it as an export format. Keep your own normalized model internally with structured ingredients. Yep. Okay, so agreed. So this makes sense in that this is going to be... Hold on, let me see. Hopefully my... Yeah, for whatever reason... All right. There, my emoji picker is broken for some reason. But for now, we'll just say, I'll just represent it. So basically, we're ending up with this schema.org recipe. And well, that's good. And then, okay, that's fair. Recipe type, yield, recipe ingredients. Yeah, so this is an interesting thing. So one could argue, though, in my mind, that recipe ingredients could at least have some level of schema, I would say, because there's, for example, quantity is a very consistent thing, although it's not always required, because some people just say like pinch of salt optional, those sort of things. So that doesn't actually have a quantity. It's like our salt to taste, for example, no quantity associated with that at all. So those are almost like, but those are almost clear exceptions to a recipe schema if we were to design one, which we probably will. And then we have the actual ingredient itself. So eggs in this case would be the ingredient. Guanciale, again, don't know what that is. Then there's like modifiers to it that tell it attributes about the egg. So in this case, you want the large eggs, or for example, large brown eggs, and let alone if people wanted to actually keep attributes regarding the specific brand of things. Because in my experience too, like if you say something like soy sauce could mean a lot of different things. So being able to be very specific about the type of soy sauce is a whole bit, and especially even to the point of the company, because there are different recipes on top of the different different types of soy sauce. And so that would be an aspect that we'd have to consider when it comes to recipe schema. So as I say this, this is like another bullet to know. Recipe. Oh, sorry. This is ingredient schema. We did talk about quantity. We did talk about like the item itself. Then we talk about like, we'll call them attributes. So in this case, we said like, okay, you know what? I'll just use this. So soy sauce is here. Attributes, it could be, it's almost like there's like light, dark, and then like the company behind it. Yeah, and then like modifiers, like no sodium, low sodium, all that stuff. So let me see, how do I want to do this? Low sodium for now. I just need the note. We can organize this later. Attributes, great. What else do we need from this? I mean, low sodium modifiers. I mean, there's like even, I don't know why I didn't do this to begin with, but we can just do it like this. So examples of this include light, dark in the case of soy sauce, like the company, like the manufacturer. Modifiers, well, like low sodium would be an example. What else are we, like real world scenarios are we thinking of? When it comes to soy sauce, you could even arguably, no, I think, oh, that's what I was gonna say. Preparation style. And so this is where like maybe you need to reduce it. I mean, earlier this is like diced, chopped. That's more for like onions and that kind of thing. But that kind of explores that idea as well, which is great. And then so we're learning about that, which is awesome. Okay, so far so good. I wonder, how are we doing? It is now been running for 11 minutes. And it's doing so it's done a lot actually. So we're at this point we're checking back in with conductor to see how it's doing. It's doing the binary, it's installing, reading stuff, TypeScript 7. What was that? Oh, okay, it was just doing like a verification bit, but that is interesting. So I mean, clearly we saw some stuff that is looking pretty interesting. Note out, we have source, main, preload, render. So this looks like this is where all the view stuff is inside the renderer. Shared types. We see some recipe things, slug title meta, extends meta. Looks like TypeScript is looking good. I mean, we can see here. This is pretty. This is why you see the social media hype the way it does, is because when you're thinking of it purely from like, I don't really know coding and I can just take this one request that I have, right? And then it's just gonna do the thing. It's kind of interesting. So I mean, as we're reviewing this, let's see. Local first, they're autonomous, yep. Scaffolding out. Electron view TypeScript, great. View 3, so it also made decisions between View 3 Pinia, SAS styling, workspace, recipe manager, tool chains gotcha. So it's looping on itself. It's built. Okay, so I don't know the exact time on that, but I think oh wait, I do know. What am I talking about? I know exactly how long this took. I kicked off this process 12 minutes ago. And here we have we're going to take a look actually at this. So let's go ahead and do a couple things. So one, I'm going to open this in VS Code. And let's see, I'll leave Claude Code up actually, because we may want to do some reviewing with it. But in the meantime, let's take a look at what we got. So first thing first, everything's added. So I'm just going to go ahead and commit this. This will be Fable, let's see, feature first pass at one line request. Okay, so actually, you know what? I will actually put this to the side real quick so that's easier for y'all to read. So readme here. So I do think this is weird. I don't know why it likes to break things up into multiple lines, but cannot read things like that. So local first, sure. So build with Electron, TypeScript, Pinia, Sass, great. Data format. So you know what we're gonna check though? Original requests. So this is what's pretty interesting. So inside of here, this was my original request. Okay, Electron view 3, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so spaghetti carbonara. So here it explains kind of how it looks. Title, tags, prep time. So the attributes are here inside the YAML front matter. That's to be expected. Ingredients, spaghetti, da, 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 da. Okay. Folder is single source of truth. External edits, new files, and deletion are picked up by the file watcher. And then you can move the file via change. Okay. Features, master UI. So searchable, tag filter, search bar. I mean, this all looks very promising. Dash, development, install, dev. Okay. Architecture, just documented that. So again, this is the thing. There are a lot of projects when created by hand, you don't get this level of data, documentation. And so to be clear, this is very cool, very impressive. Let's actually open it up and see what's going on. So I'm just going to go ahead and install everything with pnpmi. Oh, although there is a major update, but we will look into that later. Oh, broke. Why? Bum. Okay, maybe pnpm was a bad idea. So let's do this. Okay, npm run dev. I did not like that either. What happened? Do 5713. Okay, so we can actually take this opportunity to take a look at a couple of things. So one, for whatever reason, actually let me make sure I didn't screw it up on my own, because clearly it was able to run something earlier. So I want to make sure that's not me, that I didn't screw it up, because I tried to pnpm install npm run dev. Yeah, something's weird. Okay, so one of the old ways of debugging that I used to do, and it's still fine. So I would open the Claude Code extension on the side, and I would basically say, okay, so usually it has the context. So, you know, I would say getting, and so I would copy the error, getting an error on npm run dev, and then I would go ahead and just paste it and then let it do its thing. Then from my end, what I would do, obviously, is just while it's kind of doing that in parallel, then I'm thinking, okay, so there's an uninstall issue, but for some reason it's mentioned. Okay, so it's saying that npm download is never downloaded. And so now it's saying, I mean, this makes sense, but then what is it trying to do? Echo, npmrc, cat, copy. Okay, so we can allow it. But that actually makes me wonder. I'm surprised that Electron just wasn't included as the build. Yeah, it's right here. What the heck is it talking about? So, npm install, npm run dev. That's 100% what I did. But it's saying it needs to run inside the Electron folder and run node install. That seems... All right, so, we're taking a break. What's going on here? We're going to Electron. We're going to see... because something is weird. Get started. All right. Tutorial. Sure. Prerequisites. Gold. I really just want the intro. Where's the installation? What is it? Nope. All right. Building your first app. Here we go. See, you create it in it. That's fine. Install Electron save dev. Yeah. Okay. Great. Running the Electron app. Console log. Main script. This is very odd to me because there's nothing in here that says about running a command like this. Why? Why? Node install. All right, so I'm curious. So this is what it came up with, but once again, I just think something seems a touch out of place. So just to be clear, I'm going to go ahead and getting an error with npm run dev. I'm going to check this with Fable on this side real quick, because I believe in my VS Code, this one is currently running. What model are we on? Oh, that's manual. Does it say? No, it doesn't say. I think I am on the model. Yeah, 4.8. That makes sense. Okay, so it's going to say disfeared npm installed or prune intellect. Oh, it said it was binary. But why wouldn't the binary be installed? Due to network issues. And so, this is one of the things I do love about Conductor is that it is a fairly well integrated development environment, generally speaking, in terms of like having the AI run stuff. What is this? Holy smokes. So it here just populated a script apparently to make sure that Electron's installed. But again, it's weird that to me, like, why wouldn't npm install be adequate? Like, we already have the Electron here and Electron v here. So it'd be one thing if it was missing from. Oh, there you go. That's the notification. It's done. Bum bum bum. Ran it to download and write path. That's weird though, if that really is the case. All right. Well, we got an app, so let's take a look. So here's the Electron app. We have spaghetti carbonara. I mean, this looks pretty good. Reveal file actually shows me the actual markdown location that it's in. I mean, that's pretty great. Italian pasta overnight. Prep cook serves 4. Can I edit it? Okay, so it gives me basic inputs and all that stuff. I mean, this looks pretty good. Cancel. And then here we can filter it down. We can add a new recipe. Oh, interesting. Okay, everything's done via Markdown, so you do need to have Markdown saved. That gets rendered. So, okay, so that's the approach that it took. I mean, that's just it, right? And so for most people, they're probably thinking, wow, I just one shot at a recipe app. I didn't have to do any thinking. It just worked. And so, yeah, I mean, again, here it seems to actually do a lot of what we have. But once again, here's the funny thing. If the live stream had just been me coming on, making a request of the AI, and then we work through it, I think this is where I will call it that basic smell test of how AI is being used. Because here's the thing. Let's be clear. The reason I wanted to demonstrate this and to talk about this is because in the time that it took me to even think and start to understand some of the requirements, clearly the AI was able to at least one-shot what looks like is already a full recipe app. The difference, though, however, that we have to remember is that this is a problem that it's using stuff that has already been done by, like, this is a well looked at problem. And that's something I am aware of. And it's one of the reasons why I chose it is because it is very tempting when you have established solutions and practices that you just essentially kind of copy it without really understanding the why and the decisions made underneath it. And I would say it's no different than like if you're learning to, like, if you want to make a hamburger that you're just like, oh, well, I know what it is. It's just bread, lettuce, cheese, hamburger patty, and ketchup. It's like, okay, but we know that there are so many different hamburger chains out there, restaurants, and they each have their unique approach to it. And they think about, like, there are, I don't know if you know this, but like within the hamburger community, like there are opinions about the order in which you place the ingredients. It's not just what goes in the burger, right? Because some people would, for example, if you think about it, like if you're making a cheeseburger, the cheese always goes on top of the patty, right? People would never say, or at least as far as I'm aware, there's no school of thought in hamburger and cheeseburgers that's like, you should put the cheese in between the bread, the lettuce, and everything before it hits the patty. Because why? Because the understanding is that the melting of the cheese is what allows it for like the texture, it allows for the taste profile and all that stuff. And so then it's like, do you put the condiments directly on the patty? Do you put it? Anyways, so all this to say is that the process we're working through this is going to be clearly sped up, because if we can get something like this to be one shot, I think this is great. The difference, though, is that this is not what we want to ship. And I can't stress that enough. because what we want to do is get a deeper understanding of the problem it is we want to solve and actually think of ways to actually make our lives better. And so no different than, for example, to me, as I'm looking through this and thinking through like what it is that might actually be really helpful for actually improving my own world in terms of like tracking things, how things work. And those are things that we'll work through a bit as we go through. And AI will certainly speed up some of those workflows. But anyhow, yeah, that's just something I just wanted to talk about. So let's see. So we're gonna go ahead. Again, this is a done product. And in fact, this actually illustrates a principle that I will be better about clipping these sort of articles and sharing them. Is that one of the best ways for us to use AI at this point? Because one of the biggest misconceptions with AI is, at least for those who aren't as well versed in the industry, is that we know that it's indeterminate, meaning that whenever you create something, there's no, like if we give the same prompt to Fable 5 tomorrow, it's probably going to do something slightly different. And the reality is, with the way that token spend works, and because it's sort of generating and kind of doing things on the fly, the best way to use our tokens is to create very predictable ways to solve the problem, rather than just sort of like every time I need a new recipe manager, I just spit it out at, the AI to help me figure it out. We want to create, I mean, in some ways, isn't that the whole point of productivity and tech and tooling in general, is that we want to create a way for a consistent workflow that works really well and that can allow us to then think and work through problems at a higher level. That's really what we're trying to do at the end of the day. And so, let me commit this so that you all can have this. Pre-dev. This thing is weird to me though. Okay, so I mean, probably something we have a little bit of time left. So let me do this. So let me update docs, add original request, and then. So here's the thing. At this point, it is work, and it clearly the app works, but really I do not understand this pre-dev script. And so this is where I'd like to better understand. So for me, I'm gonna hidden conductor. This is actually kind of a nice feature. Although as I'm saying this, for some reason it's not doing the thing I thought it was going to. So if I do this. Weird. Hold on. Let me make sure it's not just me. Render source. Can I do this? Oh, something's funky. Oh, it's previewing it. I just want to edit it. At one point, they had the ability to actually include the line as context. Did they change that functionality? Anyway, it doesn't matter. That was one thing I did like about that. I'm kind of sad that, at least from what I can see, it is not there. But anyways, I'm not sure why we have this pre-dev. Have the pre-dev script. Shouldn't this work if a user just npm installs and then npm dev? And the reason I'm challenging this, to just sort of explain my line of thinking here, is because like the preload scripts has not. That's an Electron concept. For as far as I'm aware, once you npm install, you should be able to npm run dev. This idea here that we're seeing inside of package.json is that they're running a node process that's going to require the file system. This is basically a inline script from what I can see. And then if it exists, it's looking for this path.txt in the Electron in the node folder inside of node modules. Check that required child process and make sure that install.js works. But that just seems so silly that as part of my dev process, I have to then go and check the thing. So yeah, let's see. Why is it not working? The pre-dev is workaround added after seeing the boundary go missing twice, pinning the root cause. So now it's going to go ahead and test that. Even a clan impulse skips the binary download, so the post install scripts aren't running at all. npm rc. Do I have an npm rc file? Output. no configs, npm deliver change. Thinking config say script run. I would say this is one of the things where, for those who have worked with AI in the early days, that I really find much more helpful is that it's much better at, I mean, similar to what I'm doing, it's talking a lot in terms of what it's thinking and why it's doing the certain things. And so this is interesting. So it's claiming that Electron 43 removed the post install script, never ran the script, mystery solve. Let me check one more thing. I mean, here we go. Read, revolve, share, render, view. I mean, great. Package.json. Oh, this is a lock file. I don't want the lock file. Yeah, again, my goal here, this should not be necessary. We should not be, yeah, okay, now it's gone. Why? Remove this post install script. Requires explicit installation via install. Oh, okay, this is interesting. I want the source for this. Where is this happening? Boop, boop, boop. Let's see. Al Karuda, hello, how's it going? Let's see. I happen to have written on my BSc on a DCL for cooking recipes some time ago, so interesting to see what is being spun up here. Yeah, so yeah, welcome to the channel. So yeah, so basically for me at this point, I chose basically like a recipe manager, food management, just because one, I mean, as you mentioned, like a lot of people have either built their own or there's a lot of commercial products out there. And I thought it would be kind of a fun way to kind of explore my own workflows and just sort of like showcase different things and just talk through different workflows regarding development practices, note taking, and how to sort of work in a sort of AI world. And so just as like a quick demo, what it actually came up with. So I gave Fable 5 the option to, let me see, actually will it run? It is running. Yeah. So this is what it built. And so the prompt was basically a one shot like, hey, please build a, actually, I'll show you what it was exactly. The prompt was, let me hide that so it's a little easier to read. This was the original request. Yep, so build a local first desktop app, manage recipes entirely in Markdown format. App will be built using Electron, Vue 3 TypeScript, styling with SCSS. So like, I gave it a little bit of technical direction only because I want to be able to review the output, because otherwise a lot of times it'll choose, as I mean, you probably know this as well, but for those watching, it'll generally choose either like the most popular or what it has the most data on. And that to me, I think the simplest way I'll put it is that like the most popular option is not always the correct solution, or especially when it comes to the team managing it. And so I have specific flavors that I wanted to work with. And so, yeah, so you can see here, it renders the Markdown as expected. There is a basic create, read, update, delete, CRUD workflow. I mean, for a local first app, this is, I mean, for a one shot that you can, look through. I wonder actually, does it even, so this is actually kind of interesting. So you're saying that if I do eggs, it actually can, okay, so it is scraping everything on the inside. So yeah, so not only does it scrape the title, it's clearly scraping the internals when it comes to the search. It did well, actually. I like that. I mean, I would have wanted this anyway. So it reviews the actual file inside of the file system. So that's great. And then otherwise, yeah, so let's take a look. So, okay, so we had Fable dig into it, and Electron 43, sure. Electron V. So it looks like they're claiming there's a clash between require, and so post install has an install election on your project's post install invoking sanctioned installer. Okay, that's fine. So hey, can you show me the source for this new install Electron? And part of the reason I do this, not because I can't search for it myself, because that's exactly what, to be honest, I'm going to do. It's just more like, I'm just curious. Electron installer. Here we go. Let's see. Background requirement. That's not what I want. That's not what I want either. The whole thing. I mean, here's the thing though. How would I discover this? Is this documented on the Electron site? Because again, for me, I've always, again, one of the great things about AI when its ability to ingest things is that it can like figure things out that might not otherwise have been surfaced via official documentation, whether that be because the team forgot to mention it or whatnot. Once again, it is interesting though, because checking Electron docs. Yeah, because if it's like, okay, cool, like it went inside of here, it went inside of internal distribution, and wasn't here, then where was it? It was package, push. It's saying that it was inside of here. Node modules. Oh, sorry, I had the wrong Electron. I had the @Electron. It's saying it was inside Electron here, and then install. Great. So that's this file right here. It's saying it's coming in. It's going to sanction it, install. I mean, cool. So agreed. And like, no, I'm not questioning the AI at all. This is a sanctioned bit because it's being included in the official package. That's fine. But my question is, why isn't this? Okay, here we go. So here's the source in terms of at least it's claiming. So here we go. A separate node child for installing it. npm's Electron will install it. npm this. Okay. That's fine. And so what they end up doing is under the hood, tutorial installation. Oh, okay. So this should, okay. Did I just completely miss it? Latest post. Okay, this was 100% very old. That's not what I want at all. Improves app startup performance, file downloads, new Mac OS, breaking changes, npm install Electron. That's not what I want at all. And this is why we're learning. It's on the official breaking changes phase. Ah, okay, hold up. This is good. Now we're learning. Downloads itself. Okay, here we go. So now we actually have verified this. This happened in 43. And then post install down to dynamically the first time that the bin is run. You can use Electron with the npm ignore scripts. Okay. Got it. Sounds good. This means that skip binary downloads are imported. Okay. Fair enough. So that's fair. And so if we take a look at what's been changed then in the project since, although it's taking a long time to load, so I'm just going to spin up this side. I don't need that documented. That's too much. Let's see. So post install Electron. That fixes it. So we're saying that if we delete this, npm I, npm dev, npm run dev. Okay, that much cleaner. And it's because it was able to run SSR. Everything was good. Okay, great. That is a fix I can live with. So basically, yeah. So it looks like there's now a post install script to install Electron because it spins, but then has install script. Where is this part of it? Oh, as part of the Electron preload. That's fine. Okay, cool. So git commit config add post install script for Electron. Okay, great. Yeah, that's that. Arkaruda found the project itself. PDF. It's a bit about language design and Rascal. In the tree sitter. Yeah, happy to check out the PDF. Yeah, totally fine. Yeah, curious to see what you did with it. I've never heard of Rascal. That's pretty cool. and tree sitter nowadays with LLMs. Yeah, LLMs are definitely changing up what's going on for sure. And so, anyhow, yeah, feel free to post that. Happy to check that out. Okay, let's see. Otherwise, nice. Otherwise, as far as like for this particular session, what else do I want to do? I do want to make sure I cover everything else. Okay, cool. So see all your. We actually didn't finish that. So okay. Yeah. So we did a bit of. Okay. So there's that. Okay. Cool. Okay. So as far as a general overview of what we've. Oh, actually, if I'm going to do the overview, I think that might be a closing bit. I just want to make sure I didn't see anything. So requirement search recipes. Yeah, I'm not too worried about capturing that just yet. Yeah, I think this is good. Sweet. So yeah, Akaruda, I'm happy to take a look at that in later on, but just yeah. But thank you for posting that link. I appreciate it. Okay, so yeah, time flew by fast for this particular session, and so a couple of high-level things as far as what we were trying to do for this session. We kicked off a sort of brand new exploration project in terms of a food management app, and really talked through some of the workflows regarding like the requirements gathering, thinking through how we balance the use of AI and the comparisons of it. And so one of the things we did do is that while we were working through, talking through what exactly it is we wanted to build and what problems we were trying to solve, we went ahead and had Fable 5 go ahead and one-shot a food recipe management app, which will be included inside of the description for the notes for this particular session. And so if people want to check out what it built, we didn't get a chance to actually review the code, ran out of time for that. But what I do think is interesting is, once again, what we really discovered is that, as expected, like when we're using frontier models for AI, like it's good at creating output for whatever it is you want to do. The important part, and it's funny because this has been something I think that a lot of people who've worked in the industry for a while have learned, is that a lot of time it hasn't been the actual code that's really been the bottleneck. Like, yes, it's nice if we can get features faster or that kind of thing, but really at the end of the day, to really create products that are resilient, and more importantly, products that really get at what the user actually wants, that requires a time to be like, you have to sit with the problem and you have to sit with the learnings of it. And so this will end up becoming a theme, I'm sure. But once again, it's why I really propose, rather than think of AI as artificial intelligence and this entity that you send out to do things for you, that its purpose really is to augment your intelligence. So augmented intelligence, not artificial. And by doing so, yes, well, as you get faster with things, right? Like, I think a friend of mine said this really well. Like, he has found that the best cases of use for AI is for things that he already can do very well by hand already, right? And so when you're starting to use it to sort of call it automate or speed up processes that you're very familiar with, AI can be used very effectively. But especially when you're starting to explore new territory, or you really want to make sure that you understand the inner workings of a particular problem set, this is where AI should be used more in an exploratory fashion, or more importantly, as a way to sort of compare notes, to say, okay, this is what my instincts say, this is what I've learned, this is what I've researched. How has the AI's findings compared to this, right? And so one of the things that I know we'll want to do in the next session is we'll be exploring more of, so I'll have more of like the requirements fleshed out in the future, because we don't need to do everything on that, but I just want to show you the beginnings of working through it on Obsidian. And so I'll have that working requirement doc. We'll work through what it's like to explore those product requirements using AI to have it, like, for example, Matt Peacock has this skill called like Grill Me, for example. And so we can like test out different skills that people use in order to like basically like stress test the different ideas that they have to learn from it. And that is, to me, the way that it's best to sort of augment your workflows, augment your intelligence, and those sort of things. And yeah, and I think otherwise, at the end of the day, clearly, once again, if we were using AI to just one-shot things, it can do things that it understands quite well. Because even though people think that like sometimes the things that they're doing is revolutionary and those sort of things, we have to remember that AI in general is using data sets of what already exists. And yes, it does allow you to find some intersections between fields that you might not have ever thought of. But especially when we're talking about technical requirements and those sort of things, a lot of these functionalities have been done in other places, and it's just a matter of being intentional about the problem we're trying to solve, how we want to do it. And that is a thing that it takes time. Um, I the only thing I always want to caution against people is to not get caught up in the hype of trying to merely be productive for the sake of being productive. And I think AI is perhaps like the most extreme version. Like there's especially with the way some of people pitch the way you use AI, it's some of the most toxic forms of productivity that I've seen, because you're allowed to like hook your brain up to what feels like this infinite productivity machine where you can just do whatever you want, whenever you want it, as fast as you want it. You can have it, you can span 10 different agents to then have those agents spend another 10 different agents that then sum up to 8. Like, it's kind of wild. Like, and what I've said here, like, I say it as if it's a hyperbole, but I have heard from people in the real world who have workflows that seem like that. And it sounds like the whole 10x, 100x engineered bit. To me, that's not the case at all, because to me, when you're creating work, what's really important is that there's a sense of ownership and responsibility that comes with it. And when you have 10 agents spawning 10 sub agents that review the thing, and there's only so much time we have to actually review and think deeply about certain products and problems, that we end up in a situation where I think when you end up just on the high of outputting for the sake of outputting, you lose sight of what really matters, and how that impacts the users at the end of the day. And so this is not an argument, to be clear, to say that like, oh, coding is a craft and product development and you should never use AI. Everything should be built by hand. No, automation is very powerful for a lot of reasons. And I've loved using AI in the way that I mentioned it in this entire episode, and as we go through other ways, which is helping me think better, helping to poke holes in the way I think, and to help me learn, and to help me improve. And so if you take away anything, I would say that's really the key message from this, as you saw me work through things. Once again, in the time it took me to kind of learn about some of the new schemas that were designed to allow for recipe ingestion, exporting, and all that stuff. Like, the AI basically did one-shot a recipe app. However, again, the key thing that we want to work with here going forward is how we can just keep learning and leveraging it in a way that still provides us a way to improve our abilities and our skills and our knowledge. So with that said, that is a wrap for episode 2. Once again, I'll be streaming on Wednesdays, and so I will see you next week for episode 3 of Ben's Open Tabs. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all next week. Bye.